Hey, Bob, go on ahead. I have my headlamp. I'll be fine. No, I have it off because I don't want to blind my students. I need to teach them. Keep going and we'll catch up with you. I don't know why he's standing there in the cold water of this cave. I'm at Marengo Cave right now. I thought I would use this experience to help us with our research. But I know we have some wonderful books that you've read that will help us with our learning of caves in Indiana. And remember, the whole purpose of us learning about caves in Indiana is so that we can teach others about them as part of our habitat book. Well, let me take my gear off and I will meet you back in just about 1 second. Now that I'm ready, let's get you ready. Whoa, went a little fast. Okay, I want you to go ahead and get your things that you need for writing today. You can put me on pause, but before you do, make sure you have your notes that you've written after reading the cave book, and make sure you have the book that we've worked on for the last several days. This was the last page we did, the pond page. Make sure you have your pencil and your crayons. Put me on pause and I'll wait right here for you. Welcome back. Before we get going, I want to show you something in my notes. Now, this is the same kind of notes page I've taken for many of the other habitats, but look, I have a lot of information for what it is like. I have a lot of information for the animals that live there, for the plants that live there, but look, not a lot of information for the shelters and the cold, and we'll discuss that as we move on. I'm wondering if yours is very similar. We'll talk about that later. But here is our checkoff of all the habitats we've written about so far. We've written about pond, river, forest, and today is our last habitat to write about, cave. All right, and what is our topic all about today? You know it. I was in a cave, or I am in a cave, and our topic is caves in the cave habitat in Indiana. Okay, let's look over the notes that I came up with after reading. What is it like? Well, caves are like pockets in the earth, and they're made of rock. Some caves are very small, some are very large. There's usually water in the cave, and there are formations called stalactites, which come from the ceiling and point downward, and the other kind are stalagmites, which start at the ground and point upward. Okay, animals that live there. I learned that bats live in caves during the day when they're sleeping, but they leave the cave to go out to find food at night. I also read about a blind cave scorpion, but I then remembered that we live in Indiana, and to my knowledge, we do not have scorpions in Indiana. That is not one that I'm putting in my research, in my book rather. But I am going to include something called a blind cave salamander, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. And what were some other animals that lived there? Well, people, kind of animals, but they lived there thousands of years ago. And that is not something that I will probably include either. But it was part of my research, and I get to choose which things I put in and which things I don't, as long as I meet all the requirements. What plants are there? Well, plants can grow near the entrance of the cave, but they really didn't mention many other plants or any at all, because there is little sunlight in a cave. The further you go back in, the darker it is. So that's why things can grow near the entrance of a cave. And what kinds of shelters are there? Well, interestingly enough, the fact that it's dark makes it a shelter for lots of animals. Animals that can see have a hard time seeing in the dark. So, and what is the weather like? Well, this is interesting. The cave is always about 52 degrees. So it's kind of cold in there because it doesn't get sunlight. or doesn't have heat coming from other places. It stays at that constant temperature pretty much all the time. Okay, I learned so much about caves and I want to teach that to other people. Well, here's my plan. I'm doing this similarly to what I did yesterday. Um, I have where I have Post-its for where I want all the illustrations, and I've written on the lines the information that I want on the lines. And remember, I will add captions and labels to my illustrations when I'm done. But here, this information about what it is like. Oops, let me go back. What it is like and what the weather is like is the information that I will write on the lines. Everything else will be part of my illustrations. I said I would draw some sunlight here, the heading of cave here, entrance of the cave with ferns. It would be dark here. And then switching over, it would be darker here and then darkest here. I thought that would be a good idea because it would get darker the deeper you go into the cave. I would have bats hanging here, stalactites hanging from the ceiling down, and stalagmites hanging from or going from the ground up. I would have water flowing because there's usually water in a cave, and blind salamanders. Why blind? Well, I learned in my reading that since it's so dark there, these salamanders have no need for eyes or to be able to see, so they are born that way. They are blind. I thought that was very interesting. I also learned that they use their other senses to help them live. Okay. Again, this whole purpose is to learn, it's to teach others, but I learn in the process. And here is what I came up with. Here is my cave page. As I said, I would draw some sunlight here. And here's the heading. We always need a heading to tell our readers what they're about to read about. Well, here's the cave I drew, but I put a little note here that says inside the cave. I wanted the inside of the cave to be shown, but this is the outside. So I have 3 captions. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 labels. Remember, you need at least 1 caption, and I have 3, so I have a lot more than you need, and you need at least 3 labels on every page. Okay, so let's go ahead and look through at my text that I wrote here. Remember, the text that I write on the lines is basically explaining what the caves are like and what the weather is like. So here we go. I took it from my notes. Caves are like pockets in the earth. Some caves are small and some are very large. They are all made of rock. They are all very dark, and I forgot a word that I will have to go back in and fix. That's okay. I can put a caret and write the word R here. And they are very cool in temperature. Certain kinds of animals can live part or all of their lives in the cave. The weather is always the same. Now, interesting, that fact about some animals can live part or all of their lives. These salamanders can live their whole life in the cave. Everything they need is found there. These cave salamanders are born blind. Since the cave is totally dark, they do not need to see. They use their other senses, but everything they need to live is found in the cave. But the bats only stay inside in the daytime, because at nighttime they fly out of the cave and go hunting. Their food is found in outside of the cave. Here are those stalactites that I was talking about, and the stalagmites, and I put labels for them. And and here is one other caption I want to read. Sunlight doesn't travel very far into the cave, so the deeper you walk into the cave, the darker it gets, and that explains why it's lighter here, a little darker here, and it gets darker and darker as we move through. Well, that is all I have for my writing today. Okay, and I will put these PowerPoints out so that I will put them on the Week at a Glance so that you can look at them if you need to. And I hope you had a good time. I know I did. And I see Bob is still there. He's waiting for me. Well, I don't know who Bob is, but he seems to not go away. Anyway, have a wonderful night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, we get to add the glossary, and I'll explain what that is tomorrow. Take care.